Leading independent experts around the world are now weighing in on Operation Sindoor. John Spencer of the Urban Warfare Institute, one of the world's leading experts, is among those who has just declared Operation Sindoor a decisive victory in modern warfare. In a few moments from now, we'll be talking to John. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. Our focus continues on reporting both from the ground and bringing you special analysis on Operation Sindoor. India's defense minister, speaking in the Kashmir Valley, has questioned whether nuclear weapons are safe in the hands of Pakistan, a country he described as a rogue nation. This is overwhelming satellite images and evidence now reveals that India's integrated air defense system, the images you see on your screen, were able to deliver a body blow to Pakistan, both in terms of hitting the nerve center of its air bases and now, according to multiple reports, possibly even the entrance gates to an underground nuclear storage facility. The IAEA has rubbished rumors of nuclear radiation, but India is asking for the IAEA to supervise Pakistan's nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, as I said, satellite images, whether of the Noor Khan Air Base or the Sargodha Air Base or the Rahim Yar Khan Air Base or multiple other bases, show the damage that India was able to inflict on Pakistan. This clearly was the turning point. This clearly is what led Pakistan's Director General of Military Operations to call his Indian counterpart and ask for a ceasefire. What is important to note is that India does not call this a ceasefire. Foreign Minister Jaishankar underlined that this was a word being used in media. It is not the word being used by India. Prime Minister Modi, in his two separate speeches, has underlined an important fact. Operation Sindoor is not yet over. Joining me now from the United States of America is John Spencer, one of the world's leading experts on urban warfare, chair of the Urban Warfare Institute. Thank you, John, for making the time. I want to start by asking you about something you wrote in your note on Operation Sindoor. Of course, you hailed it as a decisive military victory, but you also said, echoing in a way what the government here is trying to argue, that this is not the end of an operation. It is merely a strategic pause, a strategic hold, and I'm quoting you here, after a rare and unambiguous military victory. Could you elaborate, on how what evidence you looked at, what factors you looked at before calling it such? Because I think it's really important for the world to hear voices outside of India on this operation.
I study war around the world. A lot of times people aren't sure what victory looks like. They're not even sure what their goals are. With Operation Sindoor, in a matter of 4 days, India was able to achieve strategic goals and basically reestablish an entire new doctrine approach to terrorism, to the threat of basically nuclear blackmail. But from the beginning, India was attacked, of course, in a vicious attack on April 22nd, and then they immediately responded. So then the goal was an immediate response, overwhelming response at the terrorist infrastructure. And then Pakistan made a decision to escalate the war, which then changes the strategic goals. A lot of people don't understand that process of how strategic goals can change based on what the other side is doing. But this is where Pakistan attacked India. India showed immense both defensive military superiority, the fact that Pakistan wasn't able to hit anything in India, and offensive superiority, that it demonstrated the ability to hit anything in Pakistan it wanted to, but was very discriminate in order to send the message, which is one of the goals, one of the strategic goals. And I laid out the 4 goals that I think that India was able to achieve in a matter of 4 days. And that's historically pretty impressive. But it was more than that. It was the fact that, its goal was limited, right? Some people want, and I've heard this even within India up to this point, they wanted an ultimate, unlimited goal, destroy them. You have them, go all in. That's also not reasonable against the strategic objectives for this operation. One was to establish a new doctrine that terror attacks, and since I've had the honor of studying some of the terror attacks, walking the terror attacks of the 2008 Mumbai attacks, visiting Amritsar, understanding some of the past approaches India took to be an attack. This was establishing a new doctrine. It was also very strong, clear messages from India, which is unfortunately also unique in modern wars, when the one side who has been attacked in this case, or doing the attacking, says very clearly what the goals are, what they struck and why they struck them. The military doing a media press conference. That's a part of decisive victory as well, when you can articulate with all transparency what you struck, how you did it within means, and basically reestablish all of these new strategic goals and doctrines, saying this is a new India, based on India's basically investments in its defense technologies, but also in moral, political clarity on never again. This is a new era. We're not going to cower to nuclear blackmail and allow this proxy warfare that Pakistan had been doing for decades. And lastly, is the strategic independence. So India demonstrated in this 4-day operation strategic independence, which in of itself is a strategic goal, saying, look, in the past, we would consider political considerations of the international community and everything, but when you're attacked, immediately responding and not needing anybody to bring the war without going overstepping the goals to an end where Pakistan's asking for a halt in the operations. That's all decisive, as in it achieved the strategic goals of India rapidly. So objectively, conclusively, a decisive victory.
That's a very lucidly explained. I want to play out a clip of Foreign Minister Jaishankar actually saying exactly what your piece, your notes on X open with. This is not the end. This is not even a ceasefire. That's not the word India is using. And that's something he underlines in this comment. Take a look.
It's been on the ceasefire as well, because many people are talking about the ceasefire aspect as well. If you want to...
No, look, ceasefire, I think one of you asked me inside about trade as well. So on the ceasefire, I mean, what you call ceasefire, we call cessation of firing and military action. We achieved, the goals which we set out to do by destroying the terrorist infrastructure in Bahawalpur, Muridke, Muzaffarabad and other places. So after that, I think since the key goals were achieved, I think we reasonably took the position because even at that start, at the start of the operation, we had sent a message to Pakistan saying we are striking at terrorist infrastructure, we are not striking at the military, so the military has an option of standing out and not interfering in this process. They chose not to take that good advice. Now, once they got hit as badly as they did on the morning of May 10th, and all of you have seen the, today the satellite pictures which actually bring out very graphically how much damage we did. By the way, the satellite pictures also bring out how little damage they did. So these pictures, I think, will tell you what a hit they took. And the same people who are not willing to stand down on 7th May were willing to talk and stand down on the 10th of May. It is very clear who wanted the cessation of firing.
So, John, three points there. FM Jaishankar, Foreign Minister Jaishankar saying we don't call it a ceasefire. 2, we gave the option to the Pakistan military to leave it just at the fact that the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed terror bases had been struck. They did not take the off-ramp on the 7th. By the 10th, enough damage had been inflicted on their military bases for them to ask for the ceasefire. Pretty much the arguments you've been making. But there's a sense in India that till people like yourselves and a couple of other experts started speaking up, in the Western media at least, this was presented as A, a dispute, not a response to a terror attack, and B, a ceasefire, and not helping the cause was Donald Trump's multiple statements claiming credit for it. Whereas in India, it's very clearly seen as Pakistan's olive branch or asking for a halt in hostilities because of the body blow it suffered militarily. Why is there this gap, you think, in the Western media's perception?
Yeah, I actually get that a lot as covering war, and it's interesting where the Western media will put its attention on what it views, it wants its storylines, and then they kind of get together and then they all have this storyline. That's the big story, right? Whether it's whatever it is, the myth of the planes that nobody has a picture of being downed, or whatever it is. And of course, if there's a U.S. event that they can put on it, the Western media is going to talk about President Trump and his statements outside of the actual objective information. And I think everything that the ministers just said was extremely accurate, explaining why you wouldn't call it a ceasefire, because Pakistan still gets an opportunity to say whether they are going to continue to escalate beyond the ladder. But India showed restraint on, look, you escalated, we demonstrated the ability to hit you anywhere at any time, and the will, which is really important, the political will. I deal with a lot of Western media, and I actually spend a lot of time playing whack-a-mole for lies that either media or nations tell. And like, look, there's no evidence for what you're saying, and I understand that's the news story, but where's the evidence, the veracity of that statement? I think I do a lot of War 101 too, and understanding why in this operation, what are the goals of India? One is to establish this new red line, to show that this will no longer continue, even diplomatically, right? With the Induced Water Treaty, things like that, saying the terrorism stops here. Now the other side gets to make decisions, and there's some instability there, right? So the Pakistan military instability, which is all concerning, which is not to say this isn't a geopolitical. Of course, this is India, in India's border, and I know that there's been even continued terror activity along the border. But this is also, it's a geopolitical. So did India talk to United States? I'm sure United States called and there were conversations. But the clear objective fact is Pakistan viewed for its interest at the moment to stop attacking India. Now we have to now they get the chance to answer the question, will they stop backing terrorist groups to do attacks in India? That's a big ask, and that's why you wouldn't stop the operation, because you're wait and see, and then the goals may change. But the decision, the initiative is with India. The deterrence that India has established is very clear. It comes with consequences. Deterrence is only if you have the capability. India has demonstrated both the offensive and defensive capability, and you have the will to do something when either attacked or not. India has demonstrated across all of both the military and the political, the will to do what's necessary to achieve the goal of securing India's borders.
You have a very interesting comment in your initial commentary on this operation, and you say India did not do this for regime change or occupation. India's limited war had very specific objectives. That's one point you make. And the other point you make is that this was not for vengeance, it was for deterrence. And then you talk about what you think the world needs to understand about a new strategic doctrine here, an attempt to change what you call the strategic equation. How do you now study and look at India's new strategic doctrine?
Well, one, I assess the political statements and see if the political statements match what we call the ways and the means. So what's the guidance been given to the military? Like I've heard they say the military has the right to, and the guidance right now, to respond to any attack immediately. So that includes a terror attack. So I assess this new doctrine based on, one, the immediate response to the April 22nd terror attack, looking and analyzing India's actions to previous, but also looking at India's defense spending and its defense capabilities. That's all, investing in Indian-made products. Like you showed at the beginning of the show, these technologies that India invested in, which were proven to be the right decisions in the path to achieve this new doctrine that required actual strength. This is what we talk about, peace through strength, is having capability, investing in defense, and then having the political will to use it very discriminately, which is also, I say in the article, as you know, that discretion is not weakness. India achieved its goals and then decided to restrain themselves And even in the targets, although there's been lies about the targets, clear military targets, legitimate targets using precision guided munitions to limit any possible collateral damage. All of this adds up to this validating a new doctrine and watching it unfold day to day as we continue after the first 4 days of the operation.
Talk a little bit about China. China was seen by many to be the ghost in the battlefield here. All of Pakistan's weaponry was supplied by China. When the sort of missiles were intercepted here in India, many of them here you can see some of them, that debris is Chinese-made missiles. Now, one view is that China didn't supply the weaponry it has to Pakistan, so Pakistan didn't have the best of Chinese equipment. But China as the sort of lurking shadow in this operation, and how India responded to basically weapons supplied by China to Pakistan. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. It gets really complex when you start looking at who's providing another country both military and diplomatic relations, or foreign military sales, as we call it. But clearly, we all know that Pakistan invested heavily in this relationship with China, and China provided all these military technologies. But China hasn't been tested in war in a very long time. So for the sake of India, Chinese systems were untested. India just showed that their calculations, their investments were the right ones. And thankfully, Pakistan's were the wrong ones. I see this all the time in wars, and even people talking about the way that wars will go. There's war on paper, and then there's the true test, which is the actual fighting in the war. So Chinese systems were showed to be wanting both in offensive and defensive capabilities. I mean, Pakistan also has some Turkish capabilities. But then people start to ask the question of, what does this mean for China? One, it definitely means that they learned the limits of what their systems and what they were selling, not just to Pakistan, but to other countries. And what does that mean? What does that mean for the backing of Pakistan? Because when you sell them something, you're also giving them some type of diplomatic status and relationship. So I hope this one shows the world that that's probably not your best investment in Chinese technologies. We've seen the same with certain other countries' capabilities. And India also had Israeli, had Russian S-400, other systems were also validated in this battle. But the question is what countries will do to Pakistan in a more strategic lens? Will they keep buying Chinese products? Probably. Did they learn a lot? Will they make adjustments? Absolutely. But does this mean that these countries will continue to support Pakistan's state sponsorship of terror, which is the big question? And we're facing this with the Islamic regime in Iran. We want countries you should stop supporting those countries unlimited without repercussions for their backing of terrorism, like the April 22nd attack, in other attacks with Lashkar-e-Taiba and other organizations. Like, there has to be repercussions, and people have been turning not India, of course, but other countries have been turning a blind eye to Pakistan's terrorism institutionalized. I mean, you have military leaders attending the funerals of terrorists. I mean, it's unfortunate we've gotten to this point, but clearly India has said enough is enough.
I'm glad you mentioned that that picture. In fact, we have that picture as well of Pakistan Army personnel. There it is, attending the funerals of established terrorists. And the other really important point to make about these two terror outfits whose bases were struck, the Lashkar and the Jaish. Pakistan, John, likes to say we're victims of terrorism. And indeed, from certain terror groups, the Pakistani people are victims. But these two terror groups have never conducted a single act of terror within Pakistan. They have only been deployed as assets and instruments of the Pakistan military, of the Pakistan deep state. So that's really important to underline there. I want to ask you in the end about the nuclear question. Prime Minister Modi said nuclear blackmail is not acceptable. The reason he said this is because the way every previous attempt by India to seek justice has worked is that the world comes running in because Pakistan either threatens, as they did even this time, to use nuclear weapons, or they present this trope about a possible nuclear war. The world then tries to tie India's hand and say, hang on, we can't afford this to happen. Now, Modi in his speech made it clear that nuclear blackmail is not acceptable. Do you think the world has understood this shift in doctrine? And how did you read that comment? Nuclear blackmail is not acceptable. What does it mean for war under the nuclear threshold?
I viewed it, and I really focused in on that because I've been watching it around the world as basically within our different circles, Western media especially, they immediately jump from any action to mutually assured destruction, thermonuclear warfare, right? So this is and has been to include in foreign policy. This aspect of because you have a nuclear weapon, you can do whatever you want. What the Prime Minister Modi said and what's happened, I think, is global leadership on that's not the way it should be. We shouldn't be doing that. Of course, nobody wants nuclear war, and it's very reckless to continue things like state-backed of terrorism or not respecting sovereign borders or attacking wars of aggression. If that's reckless, if you're a nuclear armed nation. But we, the world, especially the free world, shouldn't be allowing countries with nuclear weapons to just do whatever they want out of that fear, right? We shouldn't be living in fear. So I think that the world, and I'll be writing more about this, should take a very strong note of this leadership of how it can be done. Nuclear weapons is a weapon of survival. Nobody's threatening Pakistan's survival. This was a terrorist attack that was responded to, and then the Pakistan military recklessly escalated. So, of course, you should have the right to respond to that, and it's a very discriminate, restrained response and controlling the escalation ladder. And this is the leadership that blackmail that we do, and we've seen it in other places. For me, observing Russia's actions since 2008, and we wouldn't even arm Ukraine with a single battle tank because he might go nuclear. Like, that's not the world we should be living in. And this is I'll be focusing in a lot. I learned a lot from that statement, and it was an immense amount of leadership that I think others should follow, that we have a global international order. Even if you have a nuclear weapon, you have to follow it. And there are consequences to actions, and no, blackmail shouldn't be allowed.
Absolutely. In the end, I think in India, we're all a bit perplexed by Donald Trump's statements. Pakistan's really latching on to them to try and claim that, this was somehow US brokered. India has rubbished that. India has pointed to the mountain of military evidence that shows why the Pakistanis reached out for a halt in hostilities. I'm just going to play out Trump's latest statement. He seems to back off a bit, but not quite. Let's take a look.
I don't want to say I did, but I sure as hell helped settle the problem between Pakistan and India last week, which was getting more and more hostile. And all of a sudden you'll start seeing missiles of a different type. And we got it settled. I hope I don't walk out of here and 2 days later find out that it's not settled, but I think it is settled. And we talked to them about trade. Let's do trade instead of do war. And Pakistan was very happy with that, and India was very happy with that, and I think they're on the way. They have been fighting for about 1,000 years, in all fairness. So I said, I could settle that up. I can settle anything. Let me settle it up. Let's get them all together. How long have you been fighting? About 1,000 years. Oh, that's a lot. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about settling. That's a tough one. They've been fighting for a long time. But we got that settled. Everybody was very happy, I'll tell you. That looked like it was really going to be escalating out of control. But
My question to you, John, is that all of us smile every time President Trump speaks on this, because we're like, what is he even saying? Because Pakistan has existed for less than 80 years. So we don't know what this 1,000-year stuff is that he keeps bringing up. But Pakistan latches on to his statements to try and indicate that there was a sort of, US role as broker. India has rubbished both claims, either that of international mediation and two, that it had any link to the tariff war or to trade. Why do you think President Trump continues to make these statements? Because they're adding to Pakistan's narrative, quite frankly, even though India has rubbished them very, very specifically.
So I try not to do politics because I do war, which is politics by other means. I bleed red, white, and blue. Of course, we like our president. He says bold statements. Do I believe that the president and the the Secretary of State were very concerned, made calls? There's a strong relationship between India and the United States, and I think there should be two amazing nations. I think the media latched onto it, which then emboldens the president more. We are the world's only superpower, so you do want us as an ally. I understand, but also analyzing the war, what happened. But we do want the United States making calls to Pakistan to say, what are you doing? Why are you continuing this? I want I understand war is more than just two countries, right? Because of our geopolitical connections, that it is important to everybody, and we don't want war. And I want our president out there saying, we will not stand for terrorism anywhere in the world, and ostracize those nations and get involved in the conversation. And I think if I'm not Indian, but if I was my prime minister, I would want talking to everybody as well as saying, this is our position. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it. But it's been resolved, and we have a plan, right? So
because as you wrote in your notes, in your first commentary on Operation Sindoor, India handled this crisis without seeking international mediation. So of course the world is going to call. Of course you want the Americans putting pressure on Pakistan. Of course you want to challenge the IMF $1 billion loan. So the world is involved. I'm not suggesting that the world won't be involved, but we do this, as the Prime Minister said in his speech, on our own terms. Just a last comment on that.
Absolutely. Demonstrated absolute strategic independence. There's no question of that. I've seen that, the statement, even the transparency. They've demonstrated strategic independence in the transparency of their military operations and how rapidly they communicated what they're doing, why they're doing it, which puts people at ease that are concerned. Again, with that whole, everybody should be concerned that Pakistan was continuing to escalate until they decided in their own interest, which was, you got to give them credit, a smart move to say that they want to stop and to stop. And now we get to see what the path forward is.
Thank you, John. This has been a riveting conversation. Learned a lot from you. Look forward to your future writings, especially on the nuclear question and war under the nuclear threshold, and what it tells us about the future of modern warfare, which is, of course, your domain. John Spencer, Chair of the Urban Warfare Studies. Thank you. And we look forward to talking to you again. Thanks very much. Bye, John. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.